On today's podcast, we'll talk about learning by observing, not becoming part of the story, free solo, wildlife, and of course, embracing and leaning into your limitations. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and GUI operator goodness. Make sure to check out the breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, the musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I am Dave Comides, your host, and coming to you from Atlanta, but over the internet to Los Angeles, where I'm talking with a really talented cinematographer, Clair Popkin, who has done some really interesting stuff that's kind of a little different than a lot of the people that I've talked to. So I'm actually really excited to speak with him. Just a couple of the things that he's done. Still a Michael J. Fox movie, Inside Bill's Brain. Jim, the James Foley story, which won the Audience Award at Sundance. Abstract, The Art of Design. Wildlife, American Symphony, and of course Free Solo, which is a thing that I think most people probably know him for. 2023 Emmy nomination for cinematography for Still a Michael J. Fox movie. 2019 Emmy win for cinematography for Free Solo. 2018 winner for the Critics' Choice Documentary Award for Free Solo. 2019 Cinema Eye Honors Award for Free Solo. A couple of other nominations, and I'm sure many more noms and wins to come down the line. Claire, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you again. I still remember when I met you at CSC.
Is that I was going to say in New York? Did we work together, or did we just meet each other?
We did not. Yeah, I was prepping I think a Guinness commercial as a focus puller, and I think you had just come in, either moved to New York or just came in and introduced yourself.
So it's like 2010 or so,
something
like that.
That's about the timeline.
Yeah, exactly. I had just gotten there, and I was sort of like going. Anytime I was prepping, I was like, "Hey," I didn't know anybody, so I was meeting people. And then I think we kind of lost touch, and then the next thing I knew, I was like watching Free Solo at the Beverly Four Seasons or something like that, and you were up there talking about it.
Yes. Yeah, my career took some interesting turns, from focus pulling to being a DP.
So tell me, how'd you get into the business, and how'd you get to where you are?
Oh, that's a bit of a long story, but yeah, I started as an intern on a film. I wanted to go to film school. I didn't get accepted into the program at the college I decided to go to. I went undecided and kept applying. That didn't work out, so I got my degree in political science, international relations. But
where'd you go to school?
I went to Ithaca College in upstate New York.
And are you from upstate New York, or where are you from?
No, I grew up in Maine. My dad always lived in New York, so I spent some summers going to New York and some school breaks and was familiar. And I knew I wanted to be a cinematographer. So I applied for film programs. I didn't get into that one school for film, but I decided to go there. But I sublet an apartment in New York during the summers. And I think my sophomore year, I got an internship on an independent film. Lasted about a month. And, I was I think maybe the intern that actually did work. Like I picked up a generator truck on Long Island and drove it to set. Like things that you wouldn't do on a union set, Like I did lighting returns and stuff like that. Like to drop the dailies at the lab. And then after that wrapped, the producer was like, wow, everyone liked working with you. I'm going to go do this doc series. And I think it was called Iconoclast. Would you come on a camera PA or PA, whatever? And so I was like, sure, that's what I want to do. I want to.
Wait, you worked on Iconoclast? The show is it Showtime? I think Showtime TV show.
This was an old doc series. I think it was on Sundance TV or something. I can't remember.
Oh, Sundance. But this is where they got two people together to basically have dinner and talk. So there's literally, did you shoot the one with Michael Stipe?
So I didn't shoot. I was working as
did you work on
camera
it?
PA?
Yeah.
I don't think so. It was all kind of New York area, New York, New Hampshire, Connecticut.
The reason I ask is because there's one with Michael Stipe where he talks about the the career of an artist being a clock, and from 12
Mhm.
until 3 he's just trying to learn how to play the notes perfectly, and from 3 to 6 he's sort of adding something in, and then from 6 to midnight you forget about everything from the first 6 hours and just live in the music. and
Oh, I
and
like that.
and it was amazing. And I share this with people all the time, but nobody knows the show. Like nobody's ever seen it, and you can only get a couple of the episodes streaming for
Yeah,
some
I don't.
reason,
I
I'm
it was,
sure.
I think, a really interesting show, and I'm
I thought it
definitely
was fascinating. Yeah.
at that point. I was definitely the 12 to 3 part of my career, so very applicable.
Wait, going backwards though, what was the name of the movie that you did? Do you know? Do you remember?
Uh, it might have
Did
just been
you?
Neil Cassidy. It was about like the Beat Poet generation.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Oh, so it was something interesting. Oh, that's kind of neat.
yeah, I didn't really do that much time on set except for like picking up film or something like that. But
Hmm.
basically the producer brought me on to that other show. I met several DPs because there was a bunch of DPs working on it, and was like, I'll work for free. I want to learn to load. Like, I'll help with lighting. I'll do whatever, or camera, like any
Nice.
jobs. And so the rest of the summer, I worked as a PA doing whatever, hoping to like kind of do more camera stuff. Next summer, I came back to the city, camera PA, loaded, on jobs, a lot of freebies, worked some short films doing even G&E swing stuff. I had no idea what I
Uh-huh.
was doing. Like, I remember getting asked for a role of Opal on a job, being like, I don't know what Opal is, like asking the sound guy what it was, like some short. And so I did that, yeah, next 2 summers. And then when I graduated, I was able to kind of, I moved to city. I was able to join the union pretty quickly because I had enough connections. I basically did a couple loading second jobs. And then I was working with DP, who had, did a lot of commercial industrial stuff and some docs. And it just had me pulling focus occasionally. And it turned out I had a knack for it. So
Oh,
just kind of got on some jobs for him through word of mouth. And then he got the second Red One in the city when that came out. And so I kind of like learned that very fast. And since I already knew how to like pull and work on film, I'd go out on rental with his camera, and I met so many DPs like
wow.
that he would rent to that wanted to shoot on that camera because it's brand new. This is what, 2008 or 9 or something
And
when it came out.
basically you were going out because he trusted you. You knew how to tech it and
Yeah,
whatever,
so he'd send me out
and
as the
it was
first
new.
who could tech it, and then
Yeah.
that worked out really well for me.
Do you remember some of the cinematographers you met?
I feel like Larkin Seipel was one I met in that period, who I, ended up assisting when he'd come to New York. I ended up working as his first for a long time. I
Uh-huh.
ended up operating a feature for him when I kind of moved up, and he actually helped me get signed at the agency I'm with.
Oh, cool.
I think Matthias Koenigsweiser, who also, like, when he'd come to New York, I would first for him. Probably Matt Lloyd too. It was like a lot of the people who have now, are definitely superstars and
Yeah.
super talent. Yeah, and that kind of just like metastasized out. Like I met all these other folks, and kind of people realized, I could like pull focus on film or digital. And it was kind of a very interesting time to work in the industry because it wasn't like everyone's got a phone in their pocket and kind of thinks they can shoot and assist.
Yeah, you kind of forget that, right?
Yeah, it was a little bit more of a barrier to entry, for better or worse. I think it's much more democratized now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then my career just took off as a first. Really, really enjoyed that for about 8 years. Was just so lucky to, be able to do amazing travel jobs. I met some people who are now some of my best friends and have like, propelled me on. And were like real mentors because I didn't really go to film school. So, I learned like every job's an opportunity to like watch how someone lights, watch how someone frames. Like if you're working on a doc, everyone approaches an interview differently, right? But like we're all going for whatever end result, and it becomes subjective, but there's so many different things you can learn just by observing. So it was kind of very educational for me.
Were these a lot of commercials, it sounds like? Were they mostly
Commercials
commercials?
and documentaries. Yeah.
Okay. So were
Yeah,
the DPs mostly operating themselves?
quite frequently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not unless it was like Steadicam or, something like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
And then like, working on commercials was really good. It was just, really honed the skill as a focus puller. And then working on documentaries, I get a chance, they'd be like, oh, can you set up the lights? Can you grab a camera for the second angle? Can you just do it? So it was kind of it was a good way to just like gain a lot of skills and just be more a part of it. You got opportunities that you wouldn't get in the more kind of
Yeah.
TV commercial world.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, that's great.
so it's a nice mix, which is
Yeah.
weirdly what I kind of shoot now is commercials and documentaries. But I mean, I'm hoping to do more narrative, but
At the time, were you happy with that, or were you sort of going, "Why can't?" I mean, sometimes the grass is always greener. Like, were you wishing you were doing more narrative, or?
no, I loved it.
Yeah.
I would day play on films. I'd day play on TV shows with, some of my connections in other ACs that I met. And I never enjoyed it as much as like when I'm
Okay.
doing like a commercial. I mean, the days were just like not quite as long. You maybe got treated a little bit better. Like I got to travel a lot. Like I kind of became one of the guys that just did a lot of travel jobs. Like
Yeah.
we were doing like a project where Heineken went to like, I don't know, 14 countries in 3 months type of deal. And you're like flying first class and like, I don't know.
That's great.
It was just really good life experiences.
Did you get a lot of time to like, I mean, actually see places when you were doing this? Did you get days off and whatnot?
Yes
Or
and
was it
no.
just
I
coming
mean,
and going?
I feel like working as the first, like I never really had like the full day off. Sometimes you'd
Yeah.
have a day or two to acclimate if you went to Asia, and we'd
Yeah.
get to walk around. But a lot of times, it'd be like, make sure the gear's right. Do I have to pick up extra gear and prep that before we go? So, but it was
Yeah.
still like for someone who hadn't left the country till I graduated college, like didn't really have the money to
Oh,
travel
wow.
when I was young.
Yeah.
It was really cool. Yeah, so I kind of I worked as a first for a number of years, did a lot of interesting things, and then I think I was kind of feeling like I'm working with people my own age group who are shooting like, and maybe I at times would know more than some of them, and I was kind of like, why am I not shooting? So I felt myself getting a little burnout, and I was like, I'd like to operate, and at the time I was working a lot with Maurice Alberti,
Oh,
she's a
yeah.
DP, is doing commercials with her and some docs. And I mentioned to her that I wanted to start operating, so she was about to start this doc series about climate change called Years of Living Dangerously. And so she was like, why don't you just come on and shoot B camera with me for that? So I was like,
That's cool.
okay. And then, I mentioned that to Matt Lloyd, who was doing a pilot in town. He's like, well, why don't you operate that for me? And then I ended up doing a film with Larkin, and that, so it's something I was like, oh, I'm operating now.
Now, when you're doing B camera for these things on documentaries, I mean, are you pretty much finding your own stuff? I mean,
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, sometimes they'll be like, I feel like there's a shot, the angle's over there, or if you're shooting conversation, you'd be told where to be to kind of like who you're covering. But you're kind of making decisions instinctually and kind of like trying to mimic what you've seen them do. So yeah, I kind of were able to develop my own aesthetic a little bit. And then in 2015, I think I just finished doing a film with Larkin called Bleed for This in Rhode Island, which was a cool boxing film directed by Ben Younger. And
oh wait, Ben Younger, yeah.
yeah,
Actually, I worked with Ben, and he told me about this movie. I'd never heard it. And I watched it. Boy, that was a great movie. That's like
yeah, I feel like
I'd never heard of it. You worked on that movie. Wow, that's
B operator. I thought Larkin did a fantastic job. Ben did a fantastic job. I mean, Miles
fantastic.
Teller did. Yeah,
Ben's a great director. He's a fantastic director. And I watched this. I watched that movie, and I was like, why hasn't everybody seen this? Like, this is a
I
great
think there's some
movie.
other boxing film that came out that year did really like maybe it was Creed or something. But
Yeah.
I'd actually worked with Ben twice when I was the first AC. We'd done these Amazon commercials down in Costa Rica for like 2 years straight in the winter. And so I'd been down there as a focus puller, and like, we had actually like gotten to know each other. So like when I was at filming, so it was like kind of a cool reunion.
That's great.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to, right after that, basically I kind of got a chance to shoot my second documentary, which was about James Foley, the conflict journalist. And it was like a very kind of small film that the director, producer, writer, who also did sound, and I made, for the most part. And that film ended up, I think, as you mentioned, winning the audience for it at Sundance that year. And suddenly people were willing to hire me as a DP on docs. So I just kind of
That's great.
went with it.
Forgive me for asking this, but I mean, when you're the DP on a doc, I mean, how much? I guess every doc's different, right? I mean, how much of a controlled situation are you usually doing, or is it mostly usually just literally documentary?
I mean, there's cinema verite, documentary filmmaking, which is cameras on your shoulder. You're filming things as they unfold rather than being told about things.
Mm-hmm.
So in that, you can understand where you're going to go. Some people will maybe get you in ahead of time. You could set up a light or push a light through a window. But usually it's kind of shooting it as it lies in real life. And it's kind of your instincts, your decision-making, your understanding of the scene and what it's about in the greater context of the film. Mm-hmm. Where it fits in, like when I'm filming, do I want to like stay on someone's face as they're listening versus someone talking, or is that emotional reaction more important? So you're kind of always listening, and it might be just very reactive. But obviously you've got plenty of sit-down interviews. We've got films where we do a lot of recreations, or films where we like really light and set up a scene, and then allow the real stuff to happen in that space, so it's a little more curated. So it really depends. Like, on Free Solo, it's kind of like I might have set up some lights in Alex's van, just installed them like tubes or LEDs at various points, but I would just follow him as things happen, spend time.
Yeah.
And we shot like 800 hours. So it's.
And when you're in those situations, are you constantly sort of questioning should I stay on him, or should I go this way, or should I go down to his hands? But what if I miss something? Like, is it this constant back and forth?
It's not so much a cognitive thing. I'm not like having those thoughts. I'm usually like listening. I have a contact in one ear because I think what the subject material, what other people are talking about, or what you hear informs, or I believe should inform how you cover the scene in
Yep.
in the real world. Um, I think it's become just kind of natural to me. It's either like you cover what's happening in real time, like go to the hands, they're doing things, or you try and get cutaways later, or if you're hearing a lot of sound in the background, get a cutaway of that later. But
Hmm.
usually it's just kind of it's just kind of my instinct at this point.
It's just being in the moment, basically.
Yeah, every scene's
Yeah.
different. And
Yeah.
sometimes, if someone's talking about something and you can show it, like
Yeah.
maybe that's better than their face, because if someone's talking, we know what they look like when they're talking. Like, I don't necessarily need to see it. It's like you hear the dog, you don't need to see the dog always.
Yeah, yeah, no,
So
no, that's because the thing that I've done nowhere obviously near what you've done, but I did a little bit of documentary work on a thing that I went to Haiti for, and I remember the big thing I learned really, really quickly was if I made a decision to do something, I had to commit to it, even if halfway through I realized like I wasn't happy with my decision, because then it's well, it's just a bad choice, but it's still a choice.
100%. I think filmmaking is about decision making, and I
Yeah.
think it's really hard when people won't make decisions, and you have to cover things multiple ways and have that safety. I think the same thing. Yeah, if you swing over to cover someone in a shot, you don't just bounce back, because then it's like obvious that it was a botch, but B, it's just
Yeah.
you know what, like we don't necessarily need to see someone talking type of deal. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to be decisive in obviously narrative, in documentary, and kind of all
Yeah.
aspects of filmmaking.
And so basically at that point, are you sort of like an established DP for documentaries, and I mean, your name is going around to different people, kind of thing, because of
So
those?
before Free Solo, I've been shooting a lot of projects for HBO. After the James Foley one, HBO bought that at Sundance. I'd done one other film for them already about Abraham Lincoln, which was a beautiful film called Living with Lincoln. It was the first thing I was ever like the DP on. And
Oh,
it was just
cool.
kind of niche, but it's just like, I'm really happy with how it looks. I didn't really know what I was doing, but somehow ends up looking great.
And when you say you didn't know what you were doing, I mean, so I guess what do you do in that situation? You
Well, I
just you
mean,
just
I just wasn't, there wasn't the pressure of like, it was like a family production company. There wasn't a big studio. So it was kind of like, how am I going to light this shot? Like, it wasn't like I had a lot of people looking at my shoulder, but generally I was just like, oh, I'm going to push a 1.2K through the window, and like, just like haze things up. And I didn't really understand. We kind of figured it out as we were going.
yeah.
And then after the James Foley film, like the jobs got bigger, and kind of, so I, was a lot more decisive, kind of had to be a little bit more, to hone my interview style. So I'd shot maybe 5 to 6 HBO documentaries.
Hmm.
And then I did this series on Netflix called Abstract about designers. And I did one episode with my friend Brian Oakes, who had directed the James Foley film. And I think, it was about design and visual art. So it had to look really good. So we kind of shot widescreen and really had a lot of like freedom to do really interesting things. So it was a really fun doc. So in this one, this guy is like a shoe designer who did all the Nike Jordans, and he was all about sports and movement. So like we decided, well, the camera's always going to move. You know what? So we put this thing on a gimbal and just like moved it throughout, like went skateboarding with him, just like it was always moving in certain ways, and ended up being
Oh, that's
beautiful.
great.
People really liked that. And this other director, Chai Vassarelli, who was a co-director on Free Solo, was doing an episode. And for some reasons, they didn't use the same DP to finish her episode. They did a few days, and had the same producer, showed her the episode I'd shot. And then she brought me onto that. I hadn't shot that many big things. Like HBO things had done well, but I don't know how wide they'd been seen. So after a few days of working together, she was like, "Oh, we're about to start this film," or like, "We just started this film, about this rock climber." And I'd casually climbed for 5 years at that point.
Oh, okay. I was going to
And
ask you. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so she was like, they had the climbing covered. They didn't need a DP for the climbing, but like wanted someone to come in, and help with the verite and kind of making it more of a film, not just a climbing film. Because her husband Jimmy is one of like the best climbing photographers out there, and so they had a crack team in place already. And so like I met Jimmy, and we got along super well. And then I joined, we went right to Morocco for a month, and was just kind of like, well, and I think since I just shot the James Foley film, which had won the audience for Sundance, their film Meru had won the year before, so she kind of had some faith that I could shoot a documentary, and so that kind of helped me out.
I'm assuming that everybody knows what free solo is, but just in case they don't, can you tell
Yeah.
people what free solo is?
So it's a documentary film following a professional climber, Alex Honnold, as he tries to, and spoiler alert, successfully free solo
Thankfully.
climbs El Capitan in Yosemite, which is, a 3,000-foot vertical and overhanging, for the most part, granite wall that is very humbling to even look at as a non-climber. And free soloing is climbing without a rope of any type, any protection. So you have to do it in one go. It takes a lot of people multiple days to climb that route. They sleep on the wall. So I think he did it in sub 4 hours.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was a multi-year process and really intense to film. Anyway, the film went on. The film won an Oscar, and we won Emmys and a whole bunch of stuff for it.
Did
It was pretty
you?
good.
I mean, well, obviously, when I'm assuming when she told you about the project, she tells you what he's trying to do and what you're going to be filming, right? I mean, the whole
Yes.
thing. I mean, is there any part of you that's like that questions whether you should be a part of it? Just because, I mean, I have to assume that the chances of him not succeeding are greater than the chances of him succeeding just on before you know anything. I mean, not that he was, he was very prepared and everything, but just conceptually.
I don't think I knew enough. I had never been to Yosemite at that point. Like, I climbed enough and I knew who he was, but I was like, this sounds cool. And like, he also doesn't have to do it. He could try it
Sure.
and be like, I don't feel like doing this. Like, he
Yeah.
bails once trying, he grabs onto a bolt in the wall and then decides to bail. Like, he could also decide never to attempt it. And like, we're not going to force someone to do something like that. So I kind of jumped at the opportunity because like, I wanted, she's a talented filmmaker. I wanted to work with her. I wanted to work with Jimmy. And I was like, I like climbing. And I mean, what's better as a DP than shooting in locations that are like among the most beautiful in the world? It makes it'd be hard to do bad work there,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think as we went on, we obviously got into the ethics of it. You couldn't ask him at any point during the filming, like, when are you going to do this? Or even, are you going to do this? Because you didn't want the observer effect of influencing his decision or making him feel pressure to do
Oh
something that he
yeah.
could potentially die doing. So there are so many days where we didn't film anything, or he wouldn't see a lot of people. I'd just be hanging out at the house where he parked his van, and sometimes we'd shoot, sometimes we wouldn't, because you'd just be like, oh, I'll shoot you doing that, like stretching, and like maybe we just go climbing on a day, because you had to just kind of have that approach of not impacting his decision making.
Wow.
Um,
Because that adds like a whole nother like mental level to what you're doing. I didn't even think about that.
yeah, the
Because you
ethics
don't
of it
want to
around
get in
that.
his head or influence him or also like you said, I guess you don't ever want to make him feel like he has to do something that he is not ready for, whatever the word is.
Totally feel the pressure. Yeah, I think at like the last couple months, I basically he did not see many of the other film crew who were there, because we were just like, we don't know how many people are here, and feel the pressure of like, this operation behind him. So like, the sound
Oh,
guy would drop off a mic, I'd mic him in the morning, and we'd have these self-recording mics, and he'd just kind of wear it through the day, and I'd pick him a camera from time to time and shoot or not, depending on what's happening. Yeah, it
wow.
was. I mean, recently I just worked with the same directors. We were just on Mount Everest for like 7 weeks filming the first ski descent of the direct North Face.
I want to
Similar
ask you
type
about
of
that.
thing,
It's
like, it could
unbelievable.
happen, it could not. You can't ask someone about it. Obviously, very different environment, but similar sort of, if not more, risk profile.
So let me ask you a question. Did you discuss with Alex ahead of time, like that we're not gonna be involved with you too much so that we don't get in your head, or did he just like, is that an understood
I didn't
thing
have that
or?
discussion, but I know the directors did. Like,
Yeah.
you can ask for us to like not be there at times, and obviously
Okay.
we want the real moments when you're feeling like, no, you want the vulnerability. And I'm a large guy, I'm 6'4", and somehow Alex, after spending enough time with him, he got comfortable enough with me that he might be having like, an argument with his girlfriend, who they're not married, but at the time his girlfriend, in the van. And I'd later be like, I felt a little bit awkward. I hope that didn't bother you. But like, I totally forgot you were there. And I'd have just like sunk into the seat of his van where he lived, like filming, and like, we just eventually developed that level of sort of comfort and vulnerability, which I think shows in the film,
Well,
because
that's
he's just
actually
real.
a real credit to you, obviously, because I mean, not a lot of people could meld into a chair like that. I mean,
Just
but
enough time.
metaphorically and otherwise.
Yeah, I think I have approaches when shooting. Like, I depending on what scene, how comfortable I am with the subject. Frequently I'll start a little bit further off, back on a longer lens. I prefer to be in there wide and close, because it feels like intimate and you're there with them. But depending on how well I know subject and like how comfortable they are with me or how much they even knows me, I'll usually start backed off. I'll be on a longer lens if I'm shooting a
Wow.
zoom lens, and then I'll like slowly work my way in as, things develop and you're not just like in their face. And then by the end, you can be quite close and you're moving the camera around and you're part of it and the camera's breathing with the scene. But like, there's all sort of interesting psychological things you kind of figure out. And I think I started shooting Alex that way, but then as we became friends and became more comfortable having me around, and I would sometimes shoot a smaller camera. And like I shot most of it on the Alexa Mini, but sometimes I'd grab a small Canon because I just wanted to have not a camera on my shoulder, just depending on what was happening in the scene. I think there's a little bit of psychology involved.
Well, and I mean, I hadn't thought about this before, but it makes sense. Is there always something in the back of your mind that you don't want to in any way be part of the story, but just, seeing the story, and you don't want to affect it, like you were saying, being farther back so that you're not and giving people their space or whatever?
Yeah, generally I think a lot about that, like I don't want to be making an extra sound or like, I mean, the most basic thing is like, you don't want to be casting a shadow, right? Or impacting light, but like take that beyond to like emotional stakes. You don't want to be like impacting the story. You want to be, observing it. And in terms of, I think, real life is compelling and, I don't want to be necessarily creating it. I'd rather be kind of curating it, if you will.
Do you get drawn into these scenes on a personal level? I mean, not a personal level, but on an emotional level. Like, does it affect you, or are you able to like keep it at bay to do your job?
I mean, depending on what it is, I think there's times where I come out of things like pretty emotionally affected, but generally, I think the camera can insulate you. Like you could film a surgery and you're looking at a monitor and it's not going to gross you out per se. But if I was just standing there in the room, I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm going to vomit. So I think there's an insulation there that can occur, but if you're filming someone you like or are friends with, I think things can be a little bit more kind of emotionally effective towards you. Documents are interesting.
How long did you guys basically hang out in Yosemite waiting for him to do the climb? I mean, how long of a period of time that you're sort of going, is it today?
Yeah, we went several years in a row it might be 2 months, might be a month and a half, during the climbing season type of deal, like the fall season.
Yeah.
And he'd be working the route on a rope, rehearsing the moves, like really figuring out how to dial it in. So, we'd be able to shoot those things as like practice for how we're going to shoot the actual climb, like which operator can get like a couple angles and like be out of other people's shots. Like, so we'd shoot him practicing, over the course of months, and he might do it several times and we'd try different angles. And then, we'd watch the footage, like me and the directors and some other camera folks, and figure out like which angles felt better. Is it better to be close and wide, or is it better to be like backed off on a 200? Wow. Then you're out of that person's shot. Like, and then could you get another shot? Cause you've got maybe 6 or 7 cameras on the wall that cover 3,000 feet of climbing. And you can't fly a drone in a national park. So it's kind of like, all right, we really kind of workshopped who could get what angles, how many angles, and could they move up a rope next to him and get another one before he passed them. Like, so, we spent a lot of months there. And like one time he had slipped and hurt his ankle, like practicing the route, like sprained his ankle really bad. And so I'm hiking in New York with my dad that day. And like the producer calls me like, could you get on a plane to Sacramento tonight? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I'll meet you there with a camera, the plan for like 2 days, and I'm spending like 10 days, I just like flew out, and it was like a couple great scenes in the film. He went to the doctor with him. Then he like went from the doctor's office in a big boot to the climbing gym. And both the scenes are like in the film. And we just kind of like shot it as it happened. And something I was like, well, I guess I'm out for 10 days in Yosemite now, yeah. So it was just kind of, a lot of it was planned. We'd have these blocks, but it was, a several year process.
So I didn't even realize that. So in a weird way, you kind of rehearsed it on a level as far as if it goes in an ideal way, at least you knew how you wanted it set up.
Yes. And we had to rig remote cameras in a few places that were built to us with these, like we could trigger them from the several thousand feet away, because he didn't want people at the hardest sections. He didn't want to if he was to slip there, he didn't want one of his close friends, because all these climbers who are climbing photographers and cinematographers were friends with him. He didn't want them to watch him fall to his death in these. So the hardest part, we set up remote cameras and triggered them from below.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, because I was thinking he didn't want someone to mess with his focus, but you're saying he doesn't want someone to have to see that, which I didn't even think about that aspect of it.
I think, is what he believed, and we all believe that he would be successful. Like he's he's brilliant. He's like, the man has an IQ off the charts, and like he's, talented and very in touch, with his physicality. And I think he knew that he'd be successful. It's not like he was like, I've got an 80% chance. I think it was like, this is a 99 point whatever percent chance. Like he felt like he could do it. And
Yeah.
we all trusted him that he was, he's responsible as a person. He doesn't want to die. He's got a great life. So
Sure.
it was
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like, we always understood the stakes, but I think I can speak for myself. I felt confident, like nervous, but confident, more nervous
Yeah.
that like, can I beat him to the top and film the to the top out moments and stuff like that, on the day. So
What's it like the morning after 2 to 3 years when he goes, yeah, I think I'll climb today? I mean, like, what does that do to
I
you?
mean, it was the night before. We had anticipated it was going to be these days because it was the end of the climbing season. There was a storm coming in like 4 days, and he was looking really, really fit and really strong. And he started taking days off to rest and that kind of let his body recuperate, which is a bit more unusual. So, Jimmy and I, Jimmy's a co-director and also a co-DP, kind of were like, it's going to probably be Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So we had some people, other camera folks and other people fly in without him knowing. And we started rigging the wall, putting the remote cameras in place, at least the tripods for him, and, rigging points and dropping fixed lines. So we had anticipated, but we didn't like tell him anything. And I think Jimmy and I had just gone climbing for a day in Yosemite, and we came back to the house where Alex was kind of staying. He was stretching, and we were all hanging out, and he was like, well, I think I'm going to go scramble tomorrow. And we were kind of like, oh, cool, man. Yeah, let us know.
Well, I was going to say, and you
and
can't
then,
get excited, right? Because you don't want to
yeah.
get involved. Like you could just sort of go, great, yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, do you have extra stuff to do then? And Jimmy was like, no, we're good.
We can
And then
make
like
ourselves
eventually kind of
available.
like hiked to the top, and like got things dialed in. And then I just kind of had dinner with Alex, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to go tomorrow. And then, I was like, okay, I'll be at your van at 5 a.m. I'm like, let's
Wow.
get going. Yeah. It's intense.
So were you at the bottom then? Were you at the bottom where he sort
So
of started on the
I
wall?
went to the bottom with him, got him like walking in and departing. And then I had to race to the top. So there's a different route over to the right called East Ledges, and there's fixed lines there. So I, basically ran up to the base of that, put on some rope ascenders, and a mix of rope ascenders and climbing, basically climbed a different route up to the top. And then you kind of like hike across the top for like 30 minutes to where his route ends. And I think I got there about...
With an Alexa Mini, or what do you...
I had sent a camera ahead. So I'd sent a C300 Mark
okay.
II up top already because you could get longer battery life and was lighter.
Yeah.
So I'd shot the bottom with the Alexa Mini, dropped that in the van. We had to go around the loop, and I got dropped off and made my way up the top. And I think I only beat him by like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But I was like, going anaerobic, trying to just like basically race the top with a walkie in my ear.
He's going almost faster than you are, and you're going up a rope there.
Yeah, he was going a longer, harder route way faster with no
That's
rope.
insane.
So
I mean, the pressure because if you don't get up there, is there anybody else to meet him?
Not really. I think, Jimmy, who was shooting, would have to shoot the top out as well. You have to kind of race up there.
Wow.
But yeah, I didn't want to miss that. And then, and then I went down with, it was cool. It was an experience, very once in a lifetime. And that film really kind of helped put me on the map in terms of the level of jobs I was doing. So,
oh yeah.
And I've continued collaborating with those directors for years now.
So tell me about the skiing movie, because I heard about it. Is it out yet? I wasn't clear whether it's out yet or not.
We just sort of wrapped shooting.
Okay.
There's a press release about it Nat Geo put out. So that's what I can talk about a little bit of it. We just followed, American ski mountaineer Jim Morrison as he was, for years, but, last couple seasons trying to ascend and ski the direct north face, which only 5 people prior to this had ever ascended. And I think the last one was over 30 years ago. It's a very imposing, steep technical line up the Chinese face of Mount Everest, the north face. And we had to do it in the post-monsoon season, so we'd have enough snow for a ski descent, which is not the traditional time that people do that. So the weather's a bit trickier, because if you get really any snow at all, it comes 9,000 feet down the face. Like a centimeter of snow can become a major avalanche. So you've really there's a lot of stuff to deal with. And then, trying to film it 6,000 plus meters, just at our advanced base camp even is very hard.
So does this mean that you've climbed Mount Everest, or did you not?
I have not summited. No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't go past 6,000 meters. I was, we
Well,
had an
then what's
amazing
the
team
point
of
of
people
even
that went up.
talking about it if you didn't go past 6,000 meters?
Exactly.
I love how you sort of nonchalantly say that. Let me ask you about gear. I mean, how do you figure? I mean, that's overwhelming to me. Like, how do you deal with the cameras and the batteries and whatever? Because you got to be ready for anything, right?
Oh, on that specific film, or just in general, I guess.
Well, in general, but I mean that one for whatever reason, it seems like Yosemite is a little more controllable than Mount Everest. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean every camera's a tool, right? And like sometimes the thing I want to use most might not be the right tool. Like I own an Alexa 35, I own a Mini. I love shooting on the 35. It makes the dynamic range and I get it built out perfectly. It bounces on the shoulders, like fantastic, but is maybe not the right tool for every job. So we were lucky on this one that we were really well resourced. So we did a lot of testing ahead of time. Nat Geo, who's behind the film, was like really good about that. We shot a lot of tests of like various Canon cameras, and Canon, is a supporter of Jimmy. They've sponsored him for years. They were happy to provide us with stuff that wasn't even released yet. Mm-hmm. And so we put them through like a full, color grade over at Company 3, projected them on an IMAX screen, like looked at how far we could push things, especially with like a lot of like real extreme highlights in the snow getting blasted by the sun. And then let's say the north face is darker because it's not. So checking the range. So we did a lot of testing, and then figured out, if people are going up the mountain and it's several days, they're not going to be taking Anton Bauer batteries with them. Like, what can we do? What can we use? So, if we're using a Canon R5C, which shoots 8-bit RAW LT, like, which ended up being a great camera for some of the team, like, how do you power that? So we ended up building some custom cables, putting batteries in people's jackets, like how to keep things warm. So there's a lot of R&D. I have an amazing camera assistant I work with out of New York, Graham Deneen, who's like the other part of my brain now. Like I've lost my camera assistant technical brain. It's like not as existent anymore. And he does that, like, he's a real partner in terms of filmmaking. So, he and some of the other team members, like I think one of our camera members, like left a camera in an industrial freezer for several days, in Wyoming, just to like see what would happen. Would it still function? Because we're dealing with those extreme kind of temperature swings. Yeah. Just a lot of planning, a lot of testing. And we were lucky to be very well resourced for that and supported.
That's amazing. And so are you also skiing down parts of it, or are you just planting and watching the progress?
No, we came with a plan on how to cover it. He was the only person to ski it. We had a really solid, coverage plan after, we'd gone several years in a row trying to capture this, and for whatever reasons, weather and stuff like that, we couldn't get it till this year. So we had a lot of time similarly to like figure out where to be. But that said, on the day, like maybe he goes right instead of left on up the couloir, or there's certain things you have to kind of just go with. And that's documentary, I guess. But generally I and we tend to have a very strong plan on how we're going to do things.
And I would imagine that that's got to be a huge part of it is not only coming up with a plan, but also being able to like throw the plan out if something changes, right? I mean, and just, the question I think I have for you is, sometimes narrative wise, when I'm operating, something will change and I just have to embrace this and make this has to become something I didn't know what it was. Have you had moments like that where you just have to go, I just have to lean heavily into this, even though this wasn't what I planned?
I mean, absolutely. I think nothing ever goes perfectly according to plan, right? Yeah. I think we should always approach things with a plan and the amount of preparation, but filmmaking is generally problem solving to some degree. It's not, and sometimes the happy accidents are amazing, like you thought the light was going to like go behind this building this time. This happened, I'm like, okay, we're going to shoot at 4 p.m. because the light go behind that building in New York. Didn't think about the fact the sun is now bouncing off the like building behind me with these insane. I love that reflected light you get in New York. It's like this hard, cool, almost like a mirror board light. And suddenly I'm like, this is so much prettier. Let's shoot this down before we leave it. Things like that happen all the time. Or like on Free Solo, we're in Morocco, and like we had a 24-hour shoot day where Alex was climbing 3 routes in one day. And so it was like everyone had to cover multiple positions, then hike several miles the next thing. I think I slept in on the top of a mountain for like an hour at one point, but I'm like, okay, I know the shot's gonna be great on this 16-35 Canon lens. Like, I want to shoot this one shot there. I'm like hiking up, it falls out of my like bag and just like smashes, and I'm like, well, I've got a 24 mil. I guess that's it. Ended up being perfect. Like the frame was just perfect, and I'm glad I didn't shoot wider. I got so much more intimate when you came close.
Oh, that's so great.
It's
That's
like,
so
well, I
great.
had to go
Yeah.
back and be like, I just destroyed this lens, but the shot was better.
But
That
again,
stuff
I
happens
think
all the time.
But I think there's something really valuable in that story that obviously you're upset about the lens and whatever, but it's sort of that thing of like, I don't have another choice, so I'm going to embrace this and make it as the best that I can, and then because of just the fact that you've like leaned into that, it becomes something better as opposed to you going, well, I'll just point it there because it's my only option and whatever. You just make the best out of what you have, right?
Yeah, I think limitations can be helpful. I think we'd all love freedom to have unlimited budgets and like be able to put, shoot your every shot with a bunch of 18Ks outside, blasting in another light inside. But limitations, whether it's budget or lens or a decision you made on what you needed to bring, and then something changed, or you get stuck in traffic, you lose a time of day. Those limitations all change, but we have to just learn to make the best of them, not let it ruin the day, and not let it throw things off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes on to what we were talking about earlier about decision making. You just be decisive at that moment, not be like,
Well,
well, I could do this, I could do that.
and the thing that it occurs to me, doing mostly narrative, is I think I have the same thing, but my thing is like on the next take, I'm going to,
Mhm.
whereas you have to do the decision making, but you've got potentially one shot at it. I mean, granted, you said you're coming back several years, but you don't know which one's going to be the one that works, right? So you've just got to go, nope, this is what we're doing. So there has to be a part of your brain that just is willing to say, nope, we're moving on, right?
Yeah, well, a
Either
lot of
it's
times when shooting a documentary, it's kind of the director might not be there close, so you're kind of making decisions about how the scene is covered and like when you've got enough of the coverage, and making sure you get enough before the subject moves. So you're not just going to ask someone to go back, hey, would you say that again, would you do that again? That's just like not something we really do. Conversely, it's like you can't really, sometimes you shoot in the same locations over and over, and you can really think about how you're going to approach it better next time. Or even if it's a different location, like I know how to shoot like this car scene. I know the best way to do this because I've done things before in similar situations. So your past is going to inform your kind of like your present when you're doing it.
yeah.
And I think it's, being able to kind of recall that and have it become instinctual. And relatedly, it's like, it's hard to like not fall in love with some of your shots, and then you see the film and it's not in there, and you're like, oh, that light was just perfect at one time, I got it, but like that wasn't an emotionally compelling moment. Like then the story, I wish it had been told there, and we had this beautiful reflection or whatever, but
Yeah.
that's not it. So yeah, a little bit of a tangent, but yeah.
Do you think at some point could you see yourself doing straight up narrative at some point?
Yeah, honestly, I'd like to. I wouldn't like to do no documentaries, but I'd like to. I love, I love creating images, like beautiful images that are ugly that convey emotions. I love the process of storytelling and
Hmm.
collaborating. And I think having worked a decent amount as an operator and an assistant on more narrative stuff, I definitely want to kind of like crack that nut at a certain point. Pre-pandemic, I had some scripts from my agent, and then the pandemic happened, and suddenly everyone was available. So
Yeah.
no
Right.
one's going to give a first-time narrative DP a shot. But I do really enjoy, shooting the more narrative elements when it happens, and that's what I'm aiming to do, because
Hmm.
I'd like, not just. I would still like to do documentaries because I do want to I want to have a positive effect in the world, do things that feel like can matter in a certain sense. Not that narrative can't do that, but you know,
No, I know what
I'd
you're
like to do
saying. I mean,
both.
the question that I wonder is what do you think you'll miss some of the adrenaline aspect of when you're shooting a narrative? I mean, I don't want to say would it be, you choose the word boring, but it seems like it might be.
I mean, I don't think so. I think when I shoot commercials and stuff, it's those are like obviously boarded, scripted, set
True.
up, and
Yeah.
the pace is like so fast that sometimes it's more adrenaline than because I don't
Oh,
have a say
really?
of like, oh, I've got the scene covered. It's more like you've got to make this day. I was just shooting a commercial in Mallorca and Milan 2 weeks ago, and it was like the days were so packed, and like we had our last shoot day in Milan. The AD's like, I don't think we can make this day, and I'm like, we can make this day. Like I'm like, we shoot this at 10 a.m. I don't need to light, or I can just use a bounce, and like
Yeah.
all my experience in documentaries and working with natural light has kind of informed my approach on how to like work efficiently. Maybe just use one light, just use this, put it through a window, we're good. Like I know what that's going to look like. So
Yeah,
I think it's been a huge asset for me in terms of the more narrative and commercial work that I've done,
sure.
is being able to work and understand the way, heightened reality basically through lighting. So I feel like I get more adrenaline unless I'm shooting obviously a ski descent of Everest or someone free soloing. I generally get more adrenaline on commercial work where the days are packed.
Okay. It's a different type of adrenaline, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah, but it's still
it's it's like
adrenaline nonetheless.
yeah, it's more for pressure.
Imposed adrenaline or something like that. I don't know what the word would be.
Yes, I mean
That
budget's a real thing. So
How do you make sure that you are not doing something that's unsafe in all the excitement to get, what's happening? Because when I'm in narrative, I have to think about that, if we're shooting
mhm,
a car explosion or whatever, but I have time to do that. And there's a meeting beforehand. And when the moment happens, I know, assuming it goes well, I know what's going to happen, but
mhm.
you're in the moment and things are happening and you obviously want to grab it, but does that enter in? How
Well,
do
I
you
mean,
deal with that?
I think anytime we're dealing with things that could be potentially risky for us as a crew, we have that same meeting ahead of time. You know, it's like I've shot these. It's not that really, but I've shot these, a couple concert films, like 14 cameras down in Medellin or American Symphony. And it's like you have this whole meeting about like, don't step off the stage. This camera's doing this. Everyone understands their assignment. That'll happen if we're shooting something that's risky. It's not like I'm going to go step onto a racetrack without like a briefing of when the pits are hot or not, or shooting around firearms or something like that. Everything is, in my experience, at I think this level of documentary anyway, is done in the same way. I mean, obviously, shooting on the side of a mountain is a very different thing. It's you are kind of responsible in your own way for making sure that I'm on the rope correctly. That if I'm
Mhm.
ascending the rope to go meet Alex at the top, like no one's safety checking me that. It's if I had not been familiar enough, I could have said, "Hey, I need a safety climber to go with me." They may not have sent me, and that would have been fine too. But it's my own competence at certain things. If I'm shooting around like the edge of a cliff, like other eye is always open. I'm not stepping too close. Even if I think that's the better shot to be on the edge, I'm not going to get that. I will get a shot that still works, and no one will know that the other one would have been better.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked is just because there's no take two. And I always, my thing is usually like, yeah, I'm not going to go that close, but on the next one we'll get it or whatever. And there's no
Yeah,
take
or
two.
like if I can't shoot, if I miss a shot because it's not safe to get in a position to get it, like there's always something I can shoot. Like I can shoot someone else watching it. Kind of
Yeah,
like when you watch Grizzly Man, right? And Herzog, he doesn't like let you listen to the tape of the guy being eaten by a bear. He
that's right.
listens to it and you see his reaction. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure that's divisive, but like I'm not going to put myself at risk or any asking on my crew to be at risk for a shot. I will find something else to shoot that tells a story.
So talk to me about the Michael J. Fox documentary. I mean, because that seems like it's just a completely different animal than the other two things that we've just spoken about.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's three of us that were DPs on that. C. Kim Miles, who's awesome, who kind of did the narrative elements of that, and then
mhm.
Julia Liu and I shot the documentary elements. I had was working with Davis Guggenheim, the director, who's just like the most lovely human and talented director.
I met him
We just
years
done
ago on
this.
ER. He directed an episode of
Yeah,
ER before he became the Davis Guggenheim we know. But wonderful,
he's
wonderful guy, and he's done so
he's
much.
lovely.
Yeah.
I wish more people were like him. And
Yep.
supremely talented. We had just done this Netflix show about Bill Gates called Inside Bill's Brain, which had been, a great experience. And actually, the producer on Free Solo was his producer for a long time, and she introduced us and was like, "You got to meet this guy." And then we started working together. Anyways, he was starting the Michael J. Fox film. I'd had a rock climbing accident that year or
Oh.
shortly before, so I wasn't available to start. I was like in the hospital for a couple months.
Oh my
So
gosh.
he started working with Julia, who's a good friend of mine. She's so talented and just like emotionless people who kind of like gets what things are going on. Really talented camera person. And then when I was available, we kind of ended up tag teaming once I was able to kind of like put a camera on my shoulder again. They were still shooting. So if Julia couldn't do shoots, I would step in and shoot some of the really nice moments. Yeah, very different, very kind of emotional. I mean, honestly, like that's like a childhood hero of mine. I grew up on
Well,
Back to
that's
the
kind
Future
of what I
and
was wondering. And when I was asking before about getting emotionally involved, I was actually thinking specifically about that. Number one, because of who he is and what he's going through, but also, I mean, we're sort of in the same range.
yeah,
I remember watching him on Family Ties. I mean, and Back to the Future
yeah.
and everything. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely fanned out a bit, and he's one of those guys where it's like, he's going through like, like a really hard thing with Parkinson's, but he is not a woe is me guy. He is, he's amazing. Like he's so inspiring. So I cannot be like, I should never complain. Like I had
Yeah.
just gone through this like kind of horrendous accident, but I was like, I was pretty positive about the whole thing, but I was like, wow, okay. So I just felt like, yeah, it was like emotionally kind of uplifting in a way, actually. Yeah, he's amazing. He's inspiring. I like absolutely loved working with him on that. And with David always wants to do something different, so he wants to shoot things in every product in a different way. And
Hmm.
it's so nice as a DP to
That's
work
great.
with someone that's willing to explore. And like I think early on, I learned. I think he asked me about a shot. He's like, "Oh no, we can't do that." And he was like, "Why? Why?" And I was like, "I guess we don't say no. You just like we can, but it's going to mean
But
X, Y, Z." And like he's like so intellectual and like such a good filmmaker that he's always like, "Oh, well, that might be interesting." So it like pushes you to be a better DP. That
that's
film was a great
great.
experience. And
Oh,
collaborating
that's
with Julia
fantastic.
she's awesome. So super
That's just
fun.
great. Is it a different process for you shooting something, like these big, you know, athletic documentaries versus something? I mean, it's called still, right? And
Yes,
he's obviously not running around. I mean, is it a different process or is it the same process? Or I mean,
that's an interesting question. I mean, the process is definitely different. There's less. There's clearly less kinetic. There's less like specialty camera gear. It's a much more. I don't want to say it's more contemplative, but it's a quieter process in some ways. You spend
well,
a lot
that
more time just being.
and that's what I was wondering. Is I can understand, and maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, I think watching Free Solo, and I haven't seen the other one, but I've seen the promo that you said, so I have an idea of what
Mhm.
it's like. Like you said, I think there's obviously a tremendous amount of time of figuring it out and planning it, and then there's the physicality of it. So all of that energy, I was just wondering for something like this, where does that energy go? Does it go somewhere else? Does it go towards? I don't know.
I mean, I guess even when I'm shooting other stuff, I'm always kind of doing it with an eye for story or an ear for story, like listening is important what I'm doing. And so it's a similar thing. I'm just moving less. It's more like I've got to really find the nice shot because I'm not going to move that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be moving around a lot with him. Whereas I'm shooting a scene at 6,000 meters of like three people talking. I'm kind of moving, dancing around the scene, for the nice light, for where the emotion is, for who's talking or
Hmm.
what's happening. So it's definitely a different experience of filming, but it's still being informed by what's kind of being said or my understanding of what the scene's about.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's the same. I think shooting verite camera work is, different environments and sort of different subject matters inform how you're going to do it, but it's all very informed by what's happening and your understanding of where that fits in the greater context of the film.
Yeah. Just
Um,
because we brought Davis Guggenheim up for anybody listening, if you haven't seen Waiting for Superman, which I don't think a lot of people saw, that movie
Fantastic.
like fundamentally changed me. It was. I mean, all of his stuff is incredible, but that movie kind of blew me away. It just,
Yeah,
yeah, it's worth seeing on a lot of
that
levels.
Inconvenient Truth, people know him for. Yeah, and I think he won an Oscar for that one. He's
Yeah.
such a kind, smart filmmaker.
Absolutely. And like you said before, has done things that are making things better or trying to make things better.
Hmm.
What they do is another story.
Yeah, he
But
cares.
that's not up to. Yeah, he does. What do when yeah, so I got to assume that where you're at, I mean, you must get documentary like projects coming across your desk all the time. And my question is, what do you look in? I mean, what do you look for that when you try
Yeah.
to when you're trying to decide? I mean, I won't ask you what they are, but if you think about the things that you've turned down, like what didn't they have, or what,
So
or is it
I
not
mean,
that
there's
easy?
several things I think about, I guess, when like either like, director producer reaches out to me or it comes from my agent. The things I've turned down are generally very similar to things I've already done. I don't want to make the same film over and over again. Like I
Yeah,
would shoot another rock climbing film, but I don't want it to be the same. If they're like, we like this and that's what we want, it's like, I don't really want to do
get
that,
that guy.
Yeah, you don't want to be,
Yeah,
pigeonholed too much. Like
yeah.
I like
Hmm.
to learn in everything I do. So, the ones I've turned down are generally that, or, if it's something that I think is just not a world I want to be immersed in, like some really gory true crime where I'm just like,
Okay.
that's not a story I really feel like I want to be living in for several months.
Yeah.
Um, I think the things I look for are, things that feel like they could matter, like stories that matter, that I could maybe connect with emotionally, even if it's like they matter on a very small level to one person. Opportunities to make really distinct, beautiful visuals are also, something I'm like, the film could be, this is a bit more anodyne, but like, I think that this is going to be, we can shoot it in a super beautiful way, then I'll be like, oh, like I'm drawn to that.
Yeah.
And or like directors that I really want to work with or that I really enjoy working with. I tend to work with a lot of the same people once I work with them, like with, Jimmy Chin, Chai Vassarelli, like with Davis, my friend Brian Oakes, like I have long standing relationships and I trust that they're going to make good films as well. That like, the footage is going to be safeguarded too, because I think we've probably all worked on stuff where it's been like, that's going to be beautiful. And and maybe it is beautiful, but the final project is just not good. Like they, in my opinion, have been destroyed in the edit, or like they don't consult you for color and things or something look insane.
Yeah.
But I also love to work with new directors because I love to collaborate and learn and, just tell different stories. So it's things that feel like they can matter to the world, kind of important stories, things that could be really beautiful, and maybe things that are really interesting environments for places.
That's great. This may be a naive question, but do you, on all of these documentaries, do the directors know what they're trying to make, or do they sort of have an outline and then they go shoot it and then they make it in the edit? I mean, how much of it is designed?
There's quite a mix, on like Abstract, the design show I worked on, we had an idea of what the beats would be, and then we would learn something during an interview, or that would inform like, oh, we should actually shoot that part of the process, because it's about design process and aesthetics. So, you'd have an idea of like what we think it's going to be, but we let, what we're shooting inform the other stuff we shoot. On Free Soul, it's like the ultimate goal is that he's going to do this or not, but like we're going to shoot as if that's the film, but it would, so many forks and changes in life happens. And I think you generally have an idea, but that's never what it is in the end. Yeah, I think I said it earlier, but if you go in with the approach of like prescriptive, like this is the film, it's probably not going to be good. It's going to be, a reality show or something. So, and some people make an edit. Like I work with Matt Heineman a lot, and he's like, he has an idea what the thing is, but he wants to shoot everything. He wants to shoot 24 hours a day, like 21 hours sometimes. You just shoot it, and like he's cataloging what's happening. He knows what's important. Wow. He lets that inform him, and then they do a lot in the edit too. It's like because he doesn't miss a moment. You're like, I'm shooting a conversation on the phone, one side of it for like an hour now. Like, surely I could shoot a cutaway. I'm going to just record audio, but it's like that reaction might be important. So
yeah,
it's always a mix.
Have you had any situations, documentary or commercial or whatever, where it's just the work, something you've attempted to do shot wise, whatever, has just been an outright failure? Like it just like completely came to a halt?
I mean, I've had plenty of things where, you have this idea of a shot and like that, what I mentioned earlier, like the sun just is not where you thought it was, or it bounces off of something and you're kind of like, well, I guess that's not going to work. Or like I chose to use vintage lenses and they're flaring so insanely that I can't shoot this because like there's literally no image, like no resolution coming through the lens of someone's face. Like that's happened multiple times. We're like, yeah, we'll shoot backlight in this car. I'm going to host this trade mountain thing. And I'm shooting like a rehoused Canon FD or like a K35. And suddenly like nothing. It's just like, well, that's just actually not, it was a great idea, but like I thought, because it'd be cinematic with like a contrast your lens, but it's just like, I didn't know that. Or like learning how to delegate, was something that's big for me. How to like, I think it would happen, at a certain budget level, I was working with kind of greener people and, I didn't trust them as much in terms of delegating, and so I wouldn't communicate well, or like, my assistant wouldn't be available who I work with all the time. So I'd be like, I'd forget to communicate things, and so they'd be like, oh, we don't have that. So I have to, everything got to think like, oh, he knows I always like that lens, but like I didn't communicate to this AC who I've never worked before that like I want this probe or something. So pretty frequent, not frequent, so frequently anymore, but I've had to, think on the fly, which I think documentary work has informed.
And is it just, is there anything you can offer on how not to let that spiral you out of control? Because sometimes those things will, they'll just build and build and people will, or maybe that's why you're good at shooting documentaries. Maybe you don't have that part of you. I don't know. Because
I think like it's all about communication, right? It's how you present it, but also like letting people know right away, not trying to cover things up. It's like if I bought something, I forgot something, like I'm going to go
Own
own
it.
that in
Yeah.
personal life and in filmmaking. And like, it's, okay, that didn't work. Let's talk about it later. Let's find a solution now, versus like getting all spun up on something. I
Yeah.
think it's a mindset. I mean, because like you've still got to shoot.
Yeah.
The budget dictates that. So it's like, okay, well, and then like frequently I'm like, okay, well, again, this is a limitation, but like this could be better. How I like, I'm a just positive thinker in general. Like I'm a happy person.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, okay, like I might have wanted that lens for that shot or whatever piece of gear, hostess tray, or like I wanted that specific light and it's not there, but we'll find a way. And sometimes it's prettier. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, lean into it.
I think like I loved how you put that, because owning it's such a big part of it. I mean, hopefully you're around people who can go, okay, and they're bummed, and then they can also move on, because sometimes when
Yeah.
you're with those people who won't let it go, then it becomes a whole nother thing. But
I feel like I've been lucky enough that I haven't
yeah.
experienced that,
Uh,
or maybe they just haven't hired me again. That's why, but
Well, no, but I have to. I mean, I have no idea if I'm right, but I have to sort of think that the things that I know that you've worked on, like, these are people who I think see a bigger picture. Do you know? I mean, and they have a bigger worldview of things. And so I think when you have that, it's like, oh, we don't have that lens, or well, what lens do we have? Like, let's use that lens, because
yeah, I mean,
there's a larger thing at play.
I think it can be very easy to get attached to a certain shot or a certain idea. And then when you
Yeah.
can't do it, to be like, oh my God, like what are we gonna do? But like you're always gonna shoot. Or they say this happens frequently. You lose a location, you're like, I scout a location for a commercial or whatever project and come with the whole plan and like this is gonna be beautiful, like this is awesome. And then you lose it 2 nights before or a night before sometimes. And it's like people are running around freaking out, all these 100 emails. And I'm like, well, here's what's going to happen. Like, we're going to find a new one. We're going to shoot it. It's going to be beautiful. You'll all be happy and we'll get this happen. And it happened almost every time. That's what
Is that
happens.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you might have gotten really attached to the idea of what this was. But like, if you're too closed off to the idea of something else, you miss those happy accidents or like the fact making it as good
It's
as you
great.
can.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. My thing that I always say is nobody's going to see this scene and next to it see the scene that we were thinking of shooting, because
Great.
that doesn't exist anymore. So nobody's going to go, I wish they had done this. It's a question of, does it work and does it tell the story, right? I mean, that's the
That's
important
really
thing.
good.
Yeah.
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 Exactly. Like people won't know.
Have you ever been on one of these projects, or even in a part of the project, where you sort of think that you know the story that you're telling, and you find that it's different than what you thought it was,
I
remarkably?
mean, frequently, it's like just for solo, for example, it became like, it's not just a climbing film. There's a love story in there,
Yeah.
it's a story about chasing your dreams. Like, I was like, he gets a girlfriend partway through filming who he's now married to with 2 kids, and it's kind of like, how is this going to play out? I don't know. Like, but I was like, I'm
Yeah.
going to include her. I'm going to like shoot all these moments. And this feels like important to like his emotional development. And that film too, it's like any documentary you're making, if you go in and you're like, this is what the film is, you're probably not going to make a good film because it's really prescriptive. Like you should be learning while you're doing it and not be like, we're going to shoot this one scene for 2 minutes and that's it because that's all we need. It's like, oh, that's not really how life unfolds. So
Yeah.
when you're making a film, especially documentary, it could turn out several different ways. Like, Free Solo could have been the final climb interspersed throughout the film with other emotional beats. Like it could culminate in a climb. You don't know. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to shoot to protect for that. But just like, things are always surprising in terms of documentary work. Commercials, I think the ones I do, it's much more like I know what it's going to be. You've got the boards there, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course. That's fantastic. I will say, just because you brought it up, I'm so happy that the stuff with his girlfriend was in there, because
Yeah,
that to me was what I mean. And nothing against him, but like, he was just, without that, he was just sort of this climbing machine, and it was like, will he do it or won't he do it? And even the thing where, what I forget specifically, they go to the doctor and they point out that his amygdala doesn't fire as
yeah,
much as other people's, or something like that.
exactly.
It was fascinating, but it was more like that whole stuff where she was such an amazing part of that story, because I think, she was like what we all were going, well, not that I'm related to him the way she is, but like, are you going to lose this person? And like, what does this person
Yeah.
mean to me?
Well,
And the
it
fact that,
sets the stakes.
well, and the fact that well, I was going to say that they let you, but the fact that you got yourself to a position where you could be in those intimate moments with them, where I vaguely remember something in the van where they're like, it's almost like their heads were touching and they're talking really quietly. I think it's been a while since I saw it, but
Yeah.
there was something where I remember thinking, and I was so engrossed in it, and I was like, "Why is there a camera there? Like, how is there a
It's
camera
me.
catching this?" But yeah, no, that's. But I mean, I mean, fantastic that you could get in there and not affect, like you said, he didn't even realize you were there. I mean, that's amazing. That's exactly where you want to be, right?
Try not to affect it. Yeah, I think someone like a character like she's an amazing person, and he's lucky, and we were lucky that she's such an amazing, empathic, thoughtful person that it like really it added to the film so much, and it obviously added to his life a lot too. So
Yeah,
yeah, that was like a real. I don't know. We connect with them more. It's a
yeah.
universality there, and I think documentary films finding those universalities, the things that we share as people, are kind of what can really make things like over the edge successful. Even someone doing an act like that.
I didn't know it, but I'm so happy to hear that they're married and have two kids.
Yeah,
I don't know that I don't know
they're
that I would
awesome.
have guessed that being the outcome of that movie, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, no,
that's
they're
that's
doing
great.
great.
That's great. Is
Yeah.
there did you watch documentaries growing up? I mean,
I watch a lot of National Geographic documentaries.
okay,
My mom actually didn't let us watch TV.
okay,
So we were able to watch some Nat Geo docs. I think we watched Star Trek. A few other, like I think Gandhi we could watch.
okay,
Dance with Wolves. There's like a couple films I remember
yeah.
like watching a lot as a child. And then we'd go to my dad's as my parents were divorced, and he'd be like, "You can watch anything."
You watch
So
it
like
like
every
it's a
other
field
weekend
day,
we'd
yeah.
watch whatever we wanted. But I grew up watching a lot of kind of like National Geographic stuff for the most part.
And so, I mean, were there any documentaries that you watched growing up, or even, once you got into it, that sort of like, I mean, were important parts of your education as a documentary filmmaker?
Um, the ones growing up were definitely like nature focused, and kind of made me want to be a marine biologist or a cinematographer.
Oh,
So
okay.
I don't remember the title of those, but I think recent docs that I really think are amazing are like, I thought Boise State was incredible. The Overnighters,
Oh,
I think, is just like an absolutely stunning film.
I don't know,
That
David. What's
film,
the Overnighters?
it's about a small town it might be in Dakota. I think it's going through an oil boom, and the church is kind of taking through the people who are moving through the town, and it's just like the director, I think, kind of shot it all himself and just was there, and it's just like it's beautiful. It's like an amazing story. I think
Oh, wow.
you mentioned earlier, Waiting for Superman was,
Brilliant.
that film. I was like, there's so much power to stories like that.
Yeah.
I loved Meru, like as terms of outdoor adventure films,
Oh,
and like Errol Morris stuff, like Thin Blue Line, like, oh my god, or Vernon, Florida, like that film, amazing, like just so interesting, so quirky.
I did a commercial with Errol Morris years ago, and maybe you know this. He does well. I don't know if he still does. At the time, he was doing those big Apple commercials and stuff like that, and he would
Yes.
have like 6 or 7 documentaries going at any given time. And whenever he traveled somewhere for the Apple commercials, he would figure out what could be shot for one of them somewhere, and he would just pay the crew an extra day to shoot another piece of the documentary. And that's kind of
Oh, that's
how
too
he did it,
funny.
which was amazing. And I remember talking to him because I talked to him about the Thin Blue Line, and I said to him, if I was making a documentary, you could give me a piece of advice, like as a documentary filmmaker, what would it be? And he said, get all your footage, find the second most compelling thing you shot, and start the movie with that. And I was like,
Oh,
oh,
I like
that's
that.
actually like sort of very simply kind of genius in a way. And he was like, yeah, suck people in, and then eventually you'll pay them off with the best thing down the line. But I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's kind of
Oh,
great. But
that's great advice. I think there's a really interesting film. I think it's called Midnight Family, like Luke Lorenzen directed and shot,
oh,
about hospital crews in Mexico City, ambulance crews, sorry. And it is, wow. So that's kind of more recent one, but I feel like people should
do you
watch
think
that.
are documentaries changing because everybody has a camera and so many people like? I mean, there's documentaries and then there's sort of reality, whatever you want to call it, and there's probably a blurring of that line, I would imagine, on some level. Is
I
it a
mean,
good
yes and
thing?
no, right? Um, Documentaries, are they changing? I think there's always documentary. There's just so many different types, right? Like
Yeah,
you've got your true crime, which maybe have a formula, but not all of them do. It turns out now, you've got
yeah,
cinema verite docs. You've got ones that are relying a lot on talking heads and people telling you what happened. You've got reality shows, which like reticent to call documentaries, but there's like so many things. I do think that the fact that everyone sort of has a camera in their pocket, is interesting. I mean, we get a lot more, you know, footage of things actually happening.
There's
I
a
think
lot
this is
more
a
documenting
democratization to
going on.
storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes. Whether they make good films or not, it's a whole different thing. But
Yeah.
I have this kind of sort of unfinished thought about like too much coverage of things where it's like we have every angle of things and now there's like kind of less of a collective experience, which I think is more of a cultural issue we're dealing with in terms of everyone has their own reality. Like if you'd had 6 different cameras on the Kennedy assassination instead of the Zapruder tape film, you'd be like, oh, that was the guys that read. You'd have so many different takes. And now there's like so many people shooting different things that don't show the full story, that we're ending up with this kind of fractured reality, which I think is
Huh.
problematic. That's a whole tangent. But
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
that's
I
interesting.
don't know if they're changing or not. I think good filmmakers are going to make good films. And
Yeah.
there's a democratization to the cameras and the tools we have being smaller, and you can do shots you never could have done before, like you're putting an XDR on your shoulder and you've got 11 minutes in it. It's very different than having a 2 gigabyte card in my 35 where I can shoot for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
You have to make more choices. You don't have a desire to direct documentaries, because it seems like on some level you do that as a cameraman.
I mean, I
No.
collaborate certainly on that thing, like director's in the title of DP, I guess, but like I'd have to be passionate about the subject matter.
Uh-huh.
I love storytelling. I love collaborating. I think there's ever a story I really want to tell, but I would do it. I just haven't found that. I like shooting too much.
I'm assuming you watch, feature films like we all do, and you're probably a film buff like we all are. Do you pull out things? I really loved how that looked. I'm going to try to put that in my database and get back to that on something. I mean, do you use feature films to inform the way that you shoot sometimes, or is there
Oh,
a
totally.
complete?
I mean, I think I'm not trying to like necessarily imitate something, but like films I find films very inspiring. And like I'll go through shot deck a lot, or even like, ahead of time with directors, probably similar to most TV's approach. I'm setting references back and forth, because like I want to be able to understand their thing. And like I might send a Wyeth painting and be like, I think the tones here are really cool. I mean, especially when it comes to color, I'm setting references to the colorist ahead of time, that kind of stuff. But I find, watching films truly inspiring. And like I'm never gonna shoot like Dan Lauston does in the new Frankenstein, but I'm like, oh, I watched it. I'm like, oh, I love like the kind of like large format, the way they framed that wide and close in these ways, and the way the camera moved. Like I think
Uh-huh.
that's really cool, and that's kind of in line with how I'm enjoying shooting, things wider and closer right now.
Yeah.
Or anything that like Terry Malick does, kind of like, oh, like that can work in a more documentary way in some ways, like that kind of like the soft tones and the light, especially Tree of Life, obviously, I
Yeah.
reference that stuff a lot. So yeah, I think it'd be hard not to be influenced, even if it's not intentional, by what we watch, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, I still try to be original, but
Well, I mean, but also I think the other thing that I keep coming back to is I think everything we do at this point is on some level it's mimicking something we've seen before, right? I mean, if
yeah.
you want to go back to like the Dutch masters, maybe they came up with something new, but since then we've all been sort of right. I mean, and not even necessarily by choice, but sometimes by choice, which just means that we're paying homage to what we think is something that's impressive, which isn't a
I
bad
mean,
thing.
we are formed in a lot of ways by our memories, right? Whether it's things that happen to us in childhood in terms of who we become, like just as a person. But I think everything we see, conscious or not, is informed by something else we've seen.
Yeah.
Like I may not remember, like, oh, this shot was framed this way in whatever, The Thin Red Line, like, which I think is one of the most beautiful films of the time. But but like I'm then going to shoot these palm trees swaying in a way that the opening of that film has it, but I'm not like thinking that was shot the way so I'm going to do it. But I think it'd be impossible not to be informed by that.
Yeah, and when you're shooting these documentaries, are you were just saying those palm trees? Just made me think of. Are you constantly just sort of keeping your eyes open for things that might be interstitial or might be interesting, or I mean, you're just picking
Oh,
things off all over the place?
um, I'm usually having my other eye open, the one that's not in a viewfinder. And sometimes you can't, like, I'm like, I would love to shoot the shot right now. There's dust and backlight and it's amazing, but the story that's happening right now, you can't miss. Like the story's
Yeah,
everything. But then sometimes the other thing is like, I get so into what I'm framed and my eyes closed and that's what I see. And I forget there's a whole world outside. And that's where my amazing camera assistant, Graham, will frequently be on the headset on the comms. I operate with comms a lot now. And it'll be like, so we can communicate about focus if I'm having pull for me or whatever, because I operate much better if my AC is pulling focus, which
Yeah.
on a lot of Verite docs, I just do it myself. But frequently now with like wireless focus and video transmission, he can be in a different room.
Sure.
But he'll be like, hey, what if you like look that way? That might actually be more interesting the way like those boats are lining up. I'm like, oh. And so it's like,
that's really cool.
Things like that are really helpful. Or a director will say it too, because sometimes the world does become very small when you're looking through the viewfinder. But this means the story is really good usually.
That's fantastic. That's great. This has really been, it's fascinating to talk to you about this because, like I said, I don't think, you may be the first documentary filmmaker that I've spoken to. So
Cool.
That in and of itself is great. And the work you've done is amazing.
Thank you.
So I'll leave you with actually two questions. I usually leave people with one question, but I'm going to break it up into two parts. My final question to you, which I'll start with, and you can hopefully answer second, is advice on people making, on how to make it in this industry, how to succeed in this industry. But before that, if you could do me a favor and advice to someone who is interested in getting into the documentary world and how they can go about that, because it's a little bit of a different world than the narrative world.
Yeah. So I think if you want to start making documentaries, make one, right? But I think the secret there would be, don't start with something you know nothing about. Don't be like, well, I like race cars. I don't race cars, but I want to make a film about that. You're going to be like learning everything while you're doing it. But find something you know really well, you're an expert in. Let's say you make amazing handbags, right? Make a short doc about the process of that. You'll understand the storytelling and what the elements are to cover, and you can translate that to the next project you make. But if you try and make a film, your first thing, about something you know nothing about, you're probably going to miss a lot of the coverage and important beats. But if you do something you're already an expert in, you're going to learn a ton about filmmaking and what you need and what you don't, and the best way to do it. And I think that'll inform the rest of your career. My advice, which I feel like I have a decent amount of people email me about, like, want to start working camera. I like this. And I think the thing that's served me the best and probably can serve anyone is, if you're going to do something, do it 100%. Like, don't ever half-ass anything, whether it's working assistant, whether it's packing the camera at the end of the day, whether anything you do, you should do 100%, or you waste your own time and you waste everyone else who's collaborating with you's time by not giving everything. I mean, that being said, don't kill yourself. Like, protect your physicality, feel okay to speak up and say, like, I don't think this is safe, because I think people can feel they don't have the agency to do that. But short of things that aren't safe, like, give 100% in anything you do. People will notice. I think when I was beginning, I had so many people comment on my work ethic, and that made them willing to give me like bigger shots. So do everything 100%.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.